Now in this video, our strategy is going to be slightly different about how to select the output cell. Now before, we basically selected the first output cell and we just incremented down one at a time. This time we're actually going to make use of the control down arrow functionality that's in Excel. The idea that you can be at the top cell in an area, for example this wager, you can hit control down arrow and go to the bottom cell. And the reason this is important is that there are going to be times when you want to build code where you don't know how many trials or how many tasks have been done previously, and you want to add one more line at the bottom, right? Whether it's a Monte Carlo simulator or you're keeping track of invoices for a customer, whatever it happens to be, you want to go to the bottom and add one more row. And you don't always know what that bottom row is going to be. And so we can make use again of this control down arrow to get to the very bottom row and then go down by one more. That way you can put your new output out there. Now there's one big warning I have to give you whenever we deal with control down arrow, and you've probably seen this on your own before. If I start in a cell that is the last cell leading towards the bottom of the spreadsheet and I hit control down arrow, I'm going to go to the very bottom of the entire spreadsheet, right down 1,000,000 rows. And so what we have to be very careful about is we don't use control down arrow when we're in the last of a continuous range of cells. So that means we have to be very careful to always start from a cell that has at least one filled cell below it. All right? And I'll show you what happens if we don't do this as we get into the code in a second. So let's flip over there. I'll show you the mistake when we get there in just a few minutes. All right, so if we flip back over, what I'm going to do is just start from the code that works. Right? You'll see that I cleaned it up in between videos and I add some comments. So we're going to take this, we're going to say copy paste V2 because we're going to do it a little bit differently here. All right, so what we did before, if you remember, is we selected our output cell every time as we built and as we kind of went down. We selected a different output cell. Now this is the line we're going to want to change, and we're going to want to instead start at the top cell, use our control down arrow, and then go down one more cell. All right, so let's see actually how that happens by recording another macro so we can get that line of code for ourselves. So let's flip back over. I'm going to start recording a macro. Let's say test all the way down. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out, let's just copy this so I kind of know what some of the code is going to be. Now I'm going to go up here to K2, hit control down arrow, and then go down one more, and then paste special values. I'm going to go to the top, control down arrow, down one more, paste special values. That should be enough code that we can figure out what's going on. So let's go ahead and hit stop recording, and let's see what that created. So in module 2 is where it's going to be again, and here's our new test all the way down. Now we see code that we had before, right? Range select, selection copy, range K2 select, and now here's that new line of code we need. Selection, index cell down, select. So this is what I'm going to copy and take this back to our main module. So here we're going to want to start at that top cell and then go all the way to the bottom of that range. All right, so let's see what happens when we do this. So I'm going to change this a little bit. If you recall, we selected K11 with our output row. Okay, so we should select K11 and then go all the way to the bottom and then paste our values. So let's see what happens as we run this. So we go into our macros. Let's go to copy paste V2. And what we see is we just copy and pasted a lot of information down here at the very bottom of the spreadsheet. We kind of hit that error that I was talking about earlier. We started at K11, which has nothing in it right now, and then we went all the way to the bottom and pasted our values. So that's not exactly what we wanted, so let's try again with a little bit different style. So we flip back over, and here what we need to recognize is that we don't want to necessarily start at K11. So let's select a different cell. I'm going to actually just use our range method here. And let's start at K9. Now, why am I picking K9? Let's flip back and look. So to pick K9 is to pick this cell right here. So K9, notice it is a merged cell, but it's going to use the address from the far leftmost cell in that range. So it's going to use K9. And importantly, if I hit control down arrow, I'm going to go to the total of roles. right? I go down to the bottom of the continuous range. I don't go all the way to the bottom. If instead I selected K10 and I hit Control down arrow, now I go all the way to the bottom, which is not what I want. So I need to select something that's not the bottom row of data that I already have. K9 is always going to have another row below it, even at the very beginning when I start. So that's why I'm going to select K9. Now, importantly, if I do hit Control down arrow and then paste values, I'm going to paste over the total of my rolls and the win-lose draw. And I don't want to paste over that, so I do need a little bit of code that's going to let me go down one more cell. All right, so this is where it's a little bit of a special piece of code, but it's going to use the offset command. So let's see how that works. So I'm back in my code. I have K9 as my selection. I go all the way to the bottom, but now I want to go down one more cell. And here we're going to use selection. So whatever you're in, you're going to then offset by going down one. If you remember, the first argument of offset is how many rows you go down, or if it's negative, how many you go up, and then how many columns you move to the right, or left if it's negative. In this case, I want to go down one cell, and I don't want to move my columns at all. So I'm going to go selection offset 1, 0, which should take me then not to K10, it should take me to K11, because this will start in K9. Here, it's asking for a little bit more. We have to put our dot select. So we're going to start in K9. This next selection XL down select is going to take me to K10, the bottom of the range, and then going down one more should take me to K11. I then paste my values. Importantly, the next time through, now we have a value in K11. So we start in K9, go all the way down to K11, and then use the offset to go down and select K12. And it's going to iterate through like this, always adding one more row below. So let's check that out. If we come run this second version, now we see all 10. And importantly, if we run it again, we're not going to overwrite those first 10. So let's run it one more time. Now we have 10 more. Now we have 20 total runs rather than just 10. So we're always incrementing at the bottom rather than trying to start at the same point every time. Now let me get back and give you that warning one more time about watching out where you start. So I'm going to flip my code back, and I'm actually going to start at K10 now. Let's see what happens when I start at K10. So I should go all the way to the bottom, and then I'm actually going to try to go one cell more. Let's see what happens when I do that. So we go run it, and now I get a debug error. Application defined or object defined error. So we hit debug. It shows that this line of code, the offset, didn't work. If we flip back to Excel, we can see why. It got to the very bottom and it tried to go one more. Right? There's no more cells after row 1,048,576. So it can't go any farther. That's why we get our error. And that's why it's crucial that we always give it enough room to use that control down arrow functionality. All right, so let's fix this. Get everything working again by flipping it back to K9. And now we'll flip back one last time so we make sure it's working before we end the video. So let's run last time. There we see all 10 trials and we get our output. All right, there are going to be a couple other features that we can add to this that I'll show you in the next video.